for individuals. And I think that's been an unspoken part of me and what probably makes me a poor sociologist. But my compromise through the years has been to try to get individual level data. So you really are you're talking about living, breathing human beings and their problems, and then get as much data as you can surrounding those individuals so you can look at levels, higher levels of explanation. We also wanted to identify the correlates, which have been kind of neglected in previous research. There's a lot of research that's been done on suicide. We wanted to kind of focus on some things that haven't been treated in the literature. So we're hoping to break a little ground there. And then all of us on the panel, without exception, all of us are concerned about this as a problem. Many people here in the room may have been touched by this issue, and it's a real problem. Carolyn's going to tell, she's going to punctuate that more than we can in the data. But we want our research to matter. We don't. A lot of people, I think, when you think about academics, they think about people who publish research in journals that's primarily consumed by other people like them, and it may or may not have any kind of implications for policy or practice. We all feel strongly that somehow this kind of research should matter in terms of implications for prevention, or how might we intervene in these processes to bring these numbers down, and just to educate everybody about the contours of this. So we have several interrelated studies. My particular interest is looking at fairness. I've looked at that in other contexts. Reciprocity, kind of how does that express itself in particular with suicide. We look at legal problems, and this has really been Tom's baby. Grew out of some late night discussions we had back when I was still at Kent State. We would sit and talk about these issues, and luckily it finally turned into a grant proposal and now some data that we're really excited about. And then gender differences. If you're familiar all with the suicide literature, there are some really biased gendered explanations about suicide. And what we're going to try to do with this series of projects and other analyses that we plan on doing is challenge those explanations. And the reason, again, we want to challenge those, not because they're simply inaccurate, but we believe that they guide policy and they guide prevention and intervention efforts, so they can actually be damaged. Well, we focused on Summit County. If there's anybody who doesn't know, Summit County is where Akron's located. Northeastern Ohio, it's considered an urban county, but if you're familiar with it, there are little pockets of areas that are more suburban and even just a little bit rural. Estimated population over 500,000 people. It's one of those Rust Belt areas. It's one of those places that were highly industrialized, and it's seen a decline in that industry. And I think all of us know what happens. And, there's a domino effect in terms of when people are laid off, and businesses that depend on those industries, begin to close down, and it really hurts the community. So, we've seen a lot of economic decline in Summit County, as well as other similar communities. Study population. Our data sources were primarily those 4 that are listed there. Investigation report in Summit County, whenever there's a suicide, the medical examiner dispatches an investigator to the scene. And this investigator goes there, establishes obviously that it is a suicide, but collects a lot of detailed information, interviews anybody who happens to be there at the scene, and that investigation report is incredibly invaluable. It's just very detailed and lengthy, has a lot of good stuff in it. Autopsy results, those were part of the files we looked at. We really haven't done much with those because we're not medical people, but it's early in a series of projects, so we may find use for those. Toxicology, a lot of us are concerned about drug issues, both use of prescription and illegal drugs. Toxicology reports lays all that out, how much and what was in the deceased, and then suicide notes. We've wanted to look at suicide notes. Some of the research that Val and I have, a paper that's coming out in Suicide and Life-Threatening Behavior later this year, makes a comparison between note writers and non-note writers, and we found that really there's no meaningful differences between the two. And the importance of that is you can use suicide notes as a data source. They're not biased in the sense that only certain people write notes and other people don't. So we're doing a lot of analysis of those. We have a 10-year period, 97 to 2006, with the exception of Tom's work. He's looking at a 4-year period. He'll talk about that. And all the suicide cases for the 10 years was 622 cases. And let me know how I'm doing. Okay, perceived fairness in suicide. What we're doing right now is a replication of a study that Val and I did with Australian data, looking at suicide notes. And reciprocity, if any of you are familiar with the literature on social capital, there are 3 major elements in social or reciprocity. Normal reciprocity is supposed to be one of those, but sociological interest in reciprocity goes back decades. And the way it's in just common language, kind of the way it expresses itself are expressions like, one good turn deserves another, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Basically what we're saying in dyadic relationships, we have 2 people or a person, a group, organization, we've come to expect fairness. And if I'm getting back roughly what you're giving me in this relationship, that's, economists call that cooperation, and it's an equilibrium. But you have instances where that doesn't happen, where one person purposely takes more than they should. Okay, that's regarded as exploitation. So what Val and I have been talking about for now several years is there seems to be what we call modes of adaptation to reciprocity. So cooperation obviously is one, exploitation is one, retaliation. I feel that I've been exploited, I'm going to get even. I'm going to try to restore the balance one way or the other. I mean, you can think of a lot of ways you can retaliate towards somebody you felt had been exploited. Some people don't feel that cooperation, equilibrium in a relationship is going to happen at all. So some people just want to get out of the relationship. They want to escape. We call that retreat. So anyway, we've had these modes of adaptation. So what we did in the Australian study was look at how are those modes expressed in suicide notes. I want to give you here's an example of retaliation. These are quotes from actual suicide notes. She left me for another man. I hope this haunts blank till the day she dies. Here is somebody who is very, very angry, and they feel they've been done some kind of a wrong, and they want to get even. They want this person literally to pay, until they're dead. To that, bastard blank. But he must not have peace for the rest of his life. These are people who are retaliating. And that's why they're committing suicide. Exploiter guilt was one of the modes of adaptation we did not have, but in a preliminary